Hey folks, this is another video in a series that aspires to teach Google Apps Scripts DriveApp to beginners. In previous lessons, we've reviewed how to access all files from Google Drive, as well as how to access all files from within a folder. We're going to resume by navigating to the Files module, where we will add a new script file. The focus of this lesson will be accessing subfolders. So we're going to title this C underscore access underscore subfolders. We'll hit enter. And we will call this, or we'll change the name of our function to access folder capital S sub. So access folder capital S sub. We're going to save our project. We are going to resume on line 2, where we will hit enter, add 2 slashes for a comment, and we will create a development variable. We're going to hit enter and tab. So we're going to declare a variable called folder underscore ID, and we're going to set that equal to single quotes. We did this in the lesson on accessing folder files so that we could build out the logic of our function and then transition it to being a dynamic function. So we are going to go to line 1 and we are going to paste it or type in folder underscore ID. So once we are done with this lesson, we will have an active function called access folder sub that will allow us to access subfolders. But for the time being, we're going to hard code our folder ID into line 4. So we are going to go back to Google Drive, and we are going to copy the folder ID from the URL from the folder that we are working in. So you can see I have mine highlighted already, so I'm going to copy it. I'm going to go back to DriveApp, and I'm going to paste it on line 4. I'm going to hit the right arrow once. I'm going to add a semicolon. I'm going to hit enter twice. I'm going to hit the left arrow twice, and I'm going to add 2 slashes for a comment. We are going to open the folder using its ID. We're going to hit enter and tab, and we will declare a variable called folder, which will be set equal to DriveApp.getFolderById. We're going to pass that folder underscore ID variable to line 7. We're going to hit the right arrow, and we're going to add a semicolon. So for the time being, this function is using the hard-coded folder ID variable from line 4. Once we are done, we're going to comment this out, and then the folder ID is going to be passed as the only argument for this function, which will make it dynamic because you can use any folder ID and the function will work. From line 7, we're going to hit enter twice. We're going to hit the left arrow twice, and we're going to add 2 slashes for a comment where we will access the folders in our folder. So we're going to hit enter and tab, and we're going to declare a variable called folders, and we'll set that equal to folder.getFolders with an open parentheses. We're going to hit the right arrow, and we're going to add a semicolon. So in the access folder files lesson, I'm going to go back to Drive for a second. We use the folder ID in order to access all of the files in the folder. And that resulted in us getting a single result because we had 5 folders in here that have a varying degree of files within them. But because we used get files, we did not return the folders. So this function is going to access all of these folders and will extract the files out of them. Now, that is going to require us to have a roundabout way of accessing them because we're going to have to be using a combination of while loops and for loops. So the journey ahead is going to be a bit of a windy one, but I hope that you will be able to stick with it and that I will articulate the path in a way that will allow you to stick with it. So we're going to return back to our app script, And we are going to hit enter twice, 2 slashes for a comment, and we're going to log out the folders variable. So we're going to hit enter and tab, and then we'll do logger.log, open parentheses, and then we are going to log out that folders variable. We're going to hit run. And now you can see that we are getting a folder iterator, which is an indication that we have to use a while loop in order to access those folders. So we're going to hit enter twice, left arrow on our keyboard 4 times, 2 slashes for a comment, and now we will use a while loop to access the folders. So we're going to hit enter and tab, and we'll do while, open parentheses, folders dot has next, open parentheses. We're not going to pass any arguments in there. We're going to hit the right arrow on our keyboard twice, hit space, add curly brackets, and hit enter. 2 slashes for a comment, where we will store the folders to the folder subfolder variable. We're going to hit enter and tab. So because we already used folder on line 7, we are going to declare a variable called sub capital F folder, and we're going to set that equal to folders.next open parentheses. We're going to hit the right arrow, and we're going to add a semicolon. We're going to hit enter once, 2 slashes for a comment, log out the subfolder variable. I'm going to hit enter and tab, and we'll do logger.log, open parentheses, subfolder. I'm going to hit the right arrow on our keyboard, add a semicolon, and then we're going to run it so that we can see what's happening. So the first thing that we get is the folder iterator variable, which is the logging from line 13. The next output we're getting is all related to the logging on line 20, where we are accessing each of the folders through the while loop. So these folders are coming from that folder iterator that is stored to the folders variable. So when we use folders.hasNext and then we save folders.next to the subfolder variable, the logging output of subfolder will give us each of these names each time the while loop runs. So when we go back to my project folder, you'll see that we'll have new folder, folder to delete, and then 3 subfolders. So we have folder to delete, new folder, and then 3 subfolders in here. And you'll notice that they are organized in descending order, right? So you can see that new folder comes first because it was modified at the latest time relative to the other folders, followed by folder to delete, and then all of these subfolders here. You can see that that is the order that they appear here. So it is the standard when you're using DriveApp and you're accessing things via get folders or get files, that things will be ordered in descending order based upon most recently created to the oldest created folder or file. Cool, so we are going to resume on line 20. We're going to hit enter twice, add 2 slashes for a comment, and we are going to create an empty array to store the subfolder data. So we're going to hit enter and tab, and we're going to declare a variable called array capital S sub, and we're going to set that equal to square brackets. We're going to hit the right arrow on our keyboard, and we will add a semicolon. So if you've been following along with the previous lessons, when we use the while loop, we want to leverage the subfolder variable or whatever our iterable variable is in order to get metadata points about whatever we're looking to extract. So when we were working with files, we would extract the file name, the file ID, and the file type. That way we have metadata relating to, whether it's a sheet, a document, a slides presentation, a drawing, what have you. So because we're working with folders, we're going to want to extract the name and the ID. Because when you want to work with folders, you're probably going to look to extract things from the folders or send things to the folders or delete the folders or move the folders. So you're going to want to have that ID there. And we'll probably want the name too so that we can have a human readable way of analyzing what data we have so that we can set up the conditions of whatever we want, whatever action we want to take. So on line 23, we're going to hit enter twice. And then we are going to hit the left arrow on our keyboard twice, and we're going to add 2 slashes for a comment, and we are going to push the subfolder data into the array sub. So we're going to hit enter and tab, and we will reference array sub, and then we will use the .push method with an open parentheses, and we're just going to pass that subfolder variable from line 18 because that will default to the name. So we're going to hit the right arrow on our keyboard twice, 2 slashes for a comment, and then we'll just say this is the name. That way we kind of have some documentation to inform us or collaborators of what is going into the array and why. We're going to hit enter, and we're going to do array capital S sub, and we're going to use another .push method. And now we're going to push subfolder .get capital ID, and we'll have an open parentheses, but we're not going to pass anything in there. And we're going to hit the right arrow on our keyboard 3 times, and we'll add 2 slashes for a comment, and we'll say folder ID. We're going to hit enter twice, 2 slashes for a comment, and we will push the array sub to the empty array, which I forgot to make. So we're going to go up to line 13, and we are going to hit enter twice. We're going to hit the left arrow on our keyboard 4 times, and we're going to add 2 slashes for a comment, and we'll say empty array to store folders. Hit enter and tab, and we'll declare a variable of array, and we'll set that equal to empty square brackets. Hit the right arrow on your keyboard and add a semicolon. So now we have an empty array that we can push the individual array subs into. So we're going to go back to line 32. We're going to hit enter and tab, and we're going to say array.push open parentheses array capital S sub. Hit the right arrow on your keyboard and add a semicolon. So in order to see what's going on in here, I'm going to also add some logging so that we can see the array sub. So if you do have any errors, you have some output to see what was going on or what didn't go on. So we're going to hit enter twice, 2 slashes for a comment, and we'll say logging, and we'll hit enter and tab, and we'll do capital L logger.log open parentheses array capital S sub. We're going to hit the right arrow on our keyboard, and we are going to add a semicolon. I'm going to close some of these windows up top here because we don't need them right now. So we are going to close line 3 for development variable, line 6, line 9, and we are good. So everything on screen is what we are actively using right now. I'm on line 36, and just to kind of recap where we're at, we have an empty array that we retroactively added into our script, which is where we are going to attempt to store arrays that have information about the folders that we want to access in our while loop. So while the folder has something next within it, the while loop will continue. And we are saving whatever that is to a subfolder variable, which we are logging out on line 23. We have an empty array called array sub that we are going to collect metadata about our subfolders that we can store there. So we are using array sub.push, and then we are using subfolder in order to get the name, and then we are using subfolder.getID in order to get a folder ID. So when we push those values into an array, they are separated by commas. That will give us an array that has a name and an ID. We are then pushing that array sub into our array on line 16, which will result in the creation of a 2-dimensional array so that we have the ability to access that data and construct additional logic around it in order to set up parameters that align with the action that we want to take with our project. On line 36, we're logging out array sub so that we get some transparency into what our while loop is doing. So from line 36, we're going to hit the down arrow once. We're going to hit enter twice. We're going to hit the left arrow on our keyboard twice, and we're going to add 2 slashes for a comment. And we are going to log out the array. We're going to hit enter and tab, and we're going to do logger.log, open parentheses, and we're going to pass our array. We're going to hit the right arrow on our keyboard, and we'll use a semicolon. We're going to run our function now to make sure that it does what we want it to do. So it's looking pretty good here. So we are getting some logging here, which is coming from our folder variable, or our folders variable, which we currently have hidden in this shelf up here. So we're getting folder iterator. And then when we are getting this name here, such as new folder, you can see that we're getting that from our logger.log on line 23. And then the next thing that we're getting is output relative to our logger.log for array sub. So you're seeing that we're getting new folder, comma, and then an ID. Same thing is happening with folder to delete, and then our 3 subfolders. And then finally, we're getting a 2-dimensional array down here that is coming from pushing our array sub into the array on line, 16? Yep. So then when we log out the array on line 40, we are getting a 2-dimensional array, which we can tell because we have 2 opening brackets there and 2 closing brackets here. And then we have comma separated arrays. So you can see we have our first array there and we have our second array here. Now, the reason that that's important is because if we want to access an array, so for example, with on line 40, if I add in square brackets and I enter in the number 3, we're going to be accessing the 4th array in our data set. So you can see I am getting subfolder 2 and then its ID, which is the 4th array, right? Because we have 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have the ability now to access each array and each element within the array, which is going to be exceptionally helpful when we attempt to extract files from these subfolders, which is what we're going to do next. So we are going to continue after line 40 by hitting enter twice, hit the left arrow on your keyboard twice, and we are now going to add 2 slashes for a comment, and we're going to create an array to hold the contents of the subfolders. We're going to hit enter and tab, and I'm going to close these shelves up here. So if you want to look at any of that stuff, pause the video and go back a little bit. But I just kind of want to have a clean screen so that you can see what's going on. This is also why I have comments and then I tab in a little bit, because then I have the ability to keep my file nice and clean. So I'm also going to close line 39 because we don't need it. So now we have like a completely clean file, and we have some indication of what exists within each of these shelves if we ever need to go back and access anything. Cool, so we're going to declare a variable called files, capital array, and we're going to set that equal to square brackets. And we are going to add another set of square brackets in there that will act as a header row. This is an optional portion of this video. I just think it's kind of helpful sometimes to keep track of what is going where, so that when you're reviewing your data and if you want to send it somewhere, you have an indication of what the data is that you're working with. So the first thing that we're going to be looking to create is the file name. And then we are going to comma separate that, and we will get the parent folder ID. And then we are going to get the subfolder name. And then we're going to get the subfolder ID. So we have 2 square brackets, 2 square brackets, and then comma separated strings. And strings require either single quotes or double quotes. So that's what we are going to be pushing into this array. We are going to be accessing all of the files from the subfolders that we have stored in our array, right? So let me keep that portion open for you up top here. So this is what we are using. We are using the empty array variable on line 16. So this time we are going to use a for loop. So we're going to resume on line 43. We're going to hit enter twice, left arrow twice, 2 slashes for a comment, and we will loop through the array of subfolders. We're going to hit enter and tab, and we're going to do for, open parentheses, I in array. We're going to hit the right arrow on our keyboard, we're going to hit space, and we are going to have a set of curly brackets. We're going to hit enter once, 2 slashes for a comment, and we are going to log the array. We're going to hit enter and tab, and we'll do logger.log, open parentheses, array, square bracket, I. We hit the right arrow on our keyboard, and we are going to use a semicolon. So we're going to hit run. And what we are getting now is, I'm going to make this a little bit cleaner, so I'm going to backtrack a little bit. But right here, this is coming from line 39 when we log out the array. So we are getting all of those subfolders. And then when we do for I in array, we are then looping through the first dimension of the two-dimensional array, which is what we're getting on line 40, right? So our array is a two-dimensional array, which means that it has arrays within it that are comma separated. And when we do for I in array, and then we do logger.log array square bracket I, we are getting each array. So that's why you're seeing new folder and its ID, folder to delete and its ID, subfolder 3, its ID, and so forth. So in order for us to access the files in those subfolders, we're going to have to use the second element in those arrays. And we are going to access them using DriveApp in order to open up the folders in the same way that we have gotten folders and gotten files in this lesson and previous lessons. So what we're going to do is we're going to use array square bracket I, and then the way that we access the second element is square bracket 1, because arrays and two-dimensional arrays are 0 indexed, which means that they begin at 0. So the first value is represented by 0, the second value is represented by 1. Because the folder ID in our array is the second element, is the second element of our array, 0 is the name, 1 is the ID. So we are using array I, which is our loop variable. So that is going from, through everything in the array and going 0, 1, 2, etc. So that will access dimension 1 and will access each array. And then when we enter in that 1 here, we are accessing the ID. So we are going to go to line 48. We're going to hit enter once. We're going to have 2 slashes for a comment, and we are going to access the folders. You know what? I'll call it the subfolders just so that's clear. So we're going to hit enter and tab, and we are going to declare a variable of folder. So we're redeclaring folder. We already used it up top here somewhere. Yes, up top here on line 7. We're going to redeclare it because we are far enough away now that we can. It can be reused, and it can really be used at any point, but it's safe now in my opinion. If you want to use a different name, you can. So I'm going to use DriveApp.get folder by ID, and I'm going to have an open parentheses. And I'm going to pass in array square bracket I, hit the right arrow, square bracket 1. Hit the right arrow twice, and we're going to add a semicolon. So this up top here is just logging it out so that we have visibility into it. And then this one here is actually being used by DriveApp in order to open up the folder. We're going to hit enter once, and now we are going to access the files in the subfolder, aka the folder variable. Right? So we now have the subfolders being accessed via this variable here because we are using that array where we extracted them earlier in the script. So we're going to hit enter and tab, and we're going to declare a variable called files, which will set equal to folder.get capital F files. And we'll have an open parentheses. We'll hit the right arrow on our keyboard, and we'll add a semicolon. I'm going to hit enter once, 2 slashes for a comment, and we're going to log out the files variable. We're going to hit enter and tab, logger.log, open parentheses, files. So we're going to hit the right arrow, and we're going to add a semicolon. We're going to hit run. And now you can see we are getting file iterator again, which means that we are going to have to use a while loop, right? So we're going to have to do that same thing that we did before, which is leverage that files variable in a while loop. So we're going to go to line 54. We're going to hit enter twice. And we are going to hit the left arrow on our keyboard once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 6, 7, 8, 2 slashes for a comment, and we will use a while loop to access the files. We're going to hit enter and tab. So the reason that we did that is because I want this while loop to align with the output of the for loop, right? So if you want to close down this shelf like this, you can see that now it is structured the same way. So that's why I had us count over like that. And because of the complications of doing a while loop in a for loop by accessing all this type of stuff, I hope that this nesting organization of the file will make it easier to digest the complicated sequence of steps that we need to take in order to access these files. So we are going to actually, before we do the while loop, we're going to go to line 56. We're going to hit enter once. We're going to hit the up arrow on our keyboard once, and we're going to add another comment. We need to have an empty array in order to extract the files the same way that we extracted the folders. So we're going to create an empty array to store the files. We're going to hit enter and tab, and we will declare a variable called extracted files, and we'll set that equal to square brackets. We're going to hit the right arrow on our keyboard, and we're going to add a semicolon. We're going to hit enter once. We're going to hit the down arrow once, twice. Sorry, actually, we're going to go to the end of line 59. We're going to hit enter and tab. And now we are going to declare a while loop with an open parentheses. We're going to be referencing our files variable from line 52. So we're going to say while files dot has next open parentheses. We hit the right arrow on our keyboard twice, and we are going to hit space and then open up a curly bracket and hit enter. I'm going to close this empty array for now and this line 39 so that we have a little, and also this files array because we're not presently using it, just so that we can focus on the task at hand. So we are going to add 2 slashes for a comment, and we are going to create a sub extract, hitting enter and tab. So we're going to declare a variable called sub capital E extract, which is going to be set equal to square brackets. We're going to hit the right arrow on our keyboard, and we're going to add a semicolon. And instead of having the lowercase e here, I want this to have an uppercase e. We are going to hit enter once, and then we are going to add 2 slashes for a comment and hit space. We're going to save the files, save the next file using a variable. We're going to hit enter and tab. We're going to declare a variable called file and set it equal to files.next. We'll have an open parentheses. We're going to hit the right arrow and add a semicolon. We're going to hit enter once, and we're going to have some logging in here. No, you know what? Let's not do the logging. Actually, yes, let's do some logging. My apologies. So I'm going to add 2 slashes for a comment, and we're going to log out the file. We're going to hit enter and tab, and we'll do logger.log, open parentheses. We're going to pass in file. We're going to hit the right arrow, and we're going to add a semicolon. We're going to have 2 more loggers. We're going to do logger.log, open parentheses, and we're going to have a single quote that says the file is located in semicolon space, right arrow, space, plus sign, space, array, square bracket, I, hit the right arrow, square bracket, 0. Hit the right arrow twice, add a semicolon, hit enter, logger.log, open parentheses. The location space, capital ID is semicolon, space, right arrow, space, plus, space, array, open square bracket, I, square bracket, 1. Hit the right arrow twice, add a semicolon. So what this is going to do is we are still within our for loop, so we can still access our initial array, which has the file or the folder name and the ID. So we are going to have some output here so that we have some transparency into what we're doing with this while loop, because there have been a lot of steps in this script. So we're going to hit run so that we can see what our output is. So now you can see right down here is that in subfolder 1, we have a file called My Goals for Organization. And the location of that file is in the folder 10ppx jmj, so on and so forth. And then we go up here and you can see that we have some subfolders going on. So you can see we have a file called Wonderful and Splendid. And we're seeing that they are located in subfolder 2 and that the folder ID is 1pt. And then down here we have 1pt. So this is going to provide us with the data that we want to push into our sub-extract array. And the reason for this is because we want the file name, the file ID, the file location, and we might actually add in, I forget if I did it, we didn't do the file type. So we are also going to add in that file type after the subfolder ID up here. So we'll do file type as well. So open up your files array on line 43 and add in that file type if you want to. You don't even need to have these headers, like I said, but I've decided that I want to do that. We are going to, so like this is where we're going to get the name of the subfolder and the name of the location. And eventually we're going to pass in that parent folder ID too, so that we get substantive data about our files. So we are going to resume on line 68, and we're going to hit enter twice, and we're going to hit the left arrow on our keyboard, and now we're going to push the data into the sub extract. Hit enter and tab, and we are going to use sub extract.push, open parentheses. We're going to do this a couple times. So we're going to reference the file name, and we're going to hit the right arrow, and we're going to add a semicolon. We're going to hit enter, and we'll do sub extract.push, open parentheses, and we will do the folder ID. So this is going to be the parent folder ID, which is coming from the input of our function, or for the time being, from our development variable. So we are going to be using that argument in our output by calling this the parent ID. We're going to hit enter, and we're going to do sub extract.push, open parentheses, and then we are going to use array square bracket I, and then square bracket 0, because the first argument in our array, or the first element of our array, my apologies, is the folder name. So we're going to add this here as subfolder name, and we're going to hit enter. And by this, I mean we're going to add 2 slashes for a comment after that sub extract.push, array square bracket I square bracket 0. You're going to go to the right, and you're going to add 2 slashes and say subfolder name. We're going to do sub extract.push, open parentheses, array square bracket I square bracket 1. The second element of our array variable is the subfolder ID. So we're going to add a semicolon and a space, 2 slashes for a comment, and we'll say subfolder ID. We're going to hit enter, and the last thing that we're going to do is our newest addition, which will be sub extract.push, open parentheses, file dot get capital N mime type. Open parentheses, hit the right arrow, and there you go. Now you're going to have that mime type in there, 2 slashes for a comment, and we'll say file type. And you know what? I'm going to add in another thing in here, which will be going into files array, comma, single quote, file ID. That should also be in there. So we're going to go to line 75, hit enter, do sub extract.push, open parentheses, file dot get capital ID, open parentheses, hit the right arrow on your keyboard twice, add a semicolon, 2 slashes for a comment, and then we will say file ID. So now we are creating an array that has metadata about the file, right? So the important things like the file name, its parent folder, its subfolder name, its subfolder ID, its file type, and its file ID. You have pretty much all of what I would describe as the key metadata about your files. So the last thing that we're going to, we're going to do two more things in here. We're going to hit enter twice, 2 slashes for a comment, and we're going to log out the sub extract array. So we're going to hit enter and tab, and we'll do logger.log, open parentheses, sub extract with the right arrow, and we'll add a semicolon. This will provide you some transparency about whether or not your while loop nested within this for loop is functioning the way that you want it to. Then we're going to hit enter twice, hit the right arrow on your keyboard twice, or left arrow on your keyboard twice, 2 slashes for a comment, and we're going to push the sub extract into the extracted files array. But hit enter and tab, and we'll do extracted files dot push open parentheses sub extract. We'll hit the right arrow, and we will add a semicolon. We're going to hit the down arrow once, and then we're going to hit enter twice, and then we're going to hit the left arrow on our keyboard twice, add 2 slashes for a comment, and we are going to log out the extracted files array. Enter, tab, logger.log, open parentheses, extracted files. We're going to hit the right arrow, and we're going to add a comment. So to review what we're doing here, we started by creating a 2-dimensional array called files array. We are going to be pushing data into that array. In order for us to do that, we need to access a variable that we created called array, where we stored all of the subfolders in our parent folder ID. So we created an array with a subfolder name and ID, and we are looping through all of them in order to save them to a variable called folder. We are then accessing all of the files from that folder, which requires us to use a while loop. So because we want to extract values about each file within each folder, we created an extracted files variable where we will store that data. We want to have an array for each file in each subfolder. So we created a while loop that will be pushing file, like an individual file, into a sub-extract array. So we want each of these files to have an array of data about them, which we are using via sub-extract.push. And we're gathering things like the name, the folder ID, the subfolder name, the subfolder ID, the file type, and the file ID. We're going to have some logging here that's going to show us everything that is in each sub-extract array. And then we are going to be pushing all of those sub-extracts into the extracted files array so that we have a group of files that are coming from all of the folders. And we have some logging in here. So we are still within our for loop, right? So we left the while loop after we did the extracted files.push, and now we are still within our for loop, right? So we are going to be pushing data here, and we are still in here. So we're going to hit run so that we can see how those data structures are appearing. Cool. So you can see that we are getting 2-dimensional arrays for all of the folders. So it's a little hard to see because we have a lot of stuff going on in here. So let's try to find it up top here. So we have this folder to delete, and we are getting a couple different files here, right? So we have file 3 from folder to delete, and we are resulting in a 2-dimensional array in those extracted files, right? So this is coming from this logging here. So we're getting a 2-dimensional array. And then here we have subfolder 3 for the first time. So another subfolder 3, another subfolder 3, and then that's resulting in a 2-dimensional array. So that's great, but the problem that we have now is that we have all of these two-dimensional arrays, and we want all of the files from all of the folders to be in one array. And that's what we are going to conclude this video with by using another for loop in order to loop through all of our extracted files. So we're going to resume on line 86, and we're going to hit enter twice, left arrow on our keyboard twice, 2 slashes for a comment, and we will loop through the extracted files. We're going to hit enter and tab, and we'll do 4 parentheses J in extracted files. So the reason that I'm using J is because I am still in my for loop up top here. So I don't want to reuse that variable I. I'm going to use for J in extracted files. I'm going to hit space, open curly brackets, I'm going to hit enter, and now I'm going to push each iteration from the extracted files to the files array. I'm going to hit enter and tab. I'm going to do files array dot push open parentheses extracted files square bracket I, and hit the right arrow twice, add a semicolon. I'm going to hit the down arrow once, twice, hit delete so that my 3 curly brackets here are all in one line. I'm going to hit the down arrow, so I'm on line 93. I'm going to hit enter. I'm going to hit the left arrow on my keyboard twice, 2 slashes for a comment, and I will log out the extracted files array. Enter, tab, logger dot log open parentheses files array. At the right arrow, add a semicolon. So when I'm referencing files array, that's all the way up here on line 43 where I have this nested array already. And I'm going to hit run so that we can just kind of look at this because a lot of stuff is happening, and hopefully this output will provide us with a strong way to talk about this. So we have 2 square brackets up top here, and then we have an additional holdover here for null, 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 which is not great, but we can try and figure out where that's coming from in a little bit. But basically what we are doing is we are taking all of these arrays that we've been working with and attempting to extract their data. So we have this like header row up top here with file name, parent folder ID, subfolder name, subfolder ID, file type, and file ID. And then you can see that they are comma separated, and we have all of these data points within our arrays so that we have one for each of them. And then eventually we're getting down here to this hello line, which seems to be the last one. And then we have these nulls popping up, which I don't totally understand why that's happening. Oh, my apologies. You know why? Because I used extracted files I here instead of J. So my apologies. So on line 91, instead of I, that should have been a J for our for loop. So I'm going to hit run and see what happens. And now we're getting all of our data here precisely how we want it to. It is a 2-dimensional array because we have these square brackets at the beginning and ending. And then within it, we have these single arrays here. So it has, the first thing is our file name, our parent folder ID, our folder, subfolder name, subfolder ID, our file type, and our file ID. And we have that for all of the files. So now we have a 2-dimensional array that we can work with so that we have extracted all of the files from our subfolders. So what we're going to do now is we are going to finish this up by turning it into a functional set of logic. So we're going to go on line 96. We're going to hit enter twice, left arrow twice, 2 slashes for a comment, and declare our return statement. I'm going to hit enter and tab, and we'll do return files, capital A, array. I'm going to add a semicolon. We're going to go all the way to the top, and we are going to comment out our development variable. And before I do that, I'm also going to highlight this folder ID here. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to go to my code file. I'm going to hit enter twice, hit the left arrow on my keyboard twice, 2 slashes for a comment, and now we will test out our subfolder function. We'll hit enter and tab, and we'll do logger.log, open parentheses, access subfolder function, open parentheses, paste in the folder ID, and we will hit run. And now we should be seeing the output of our subfolder function appearing in our code file. So we have the ability to access that two-dimensional array in another environment. And what I'm going to do real quick is we should also comment out line 96 and comment out any other logger statements in here that you don't want to see. That way, when you have your output in your console log, you have a nice clean output instead of this duplicated output, which is what we're seeing here.
Now that your extracted files are in a two-dimensional array, you have the ability to continue transforming them, such as using conditional if statements, or you can send them to a Google Sheet in order to review the data. If you'd like to learn how to do that, I have videos linked in the description, as well as on my channel page.